where he puts together some amazing stories. The link is in the description box, so please visit the channel and hit the subscribe button. Now let's start with today's story. When my wife got a new job about 4.5 months ago, I was happy for her. But along with the job came a new group of friends, women I immediately disliked. They were the hardcore feminist, professional victim, social justice warrior types. The kind who would yell at you for opening the door for them or not opening the door for them. You couldn't win either way. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was just a phase or something that wouldn't affect us. But over the last 2 months, I started noticing disturbing changes in her. We've been married for 11 years and have 2 kids, a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. In all that time, I had never seen her like this. She started accusing me of all sorts of nonsense, claiming I was born evil simply because men had historically suppressed women. Things I used to do for her, things she once appreciated, suddenly became reasons to fight. It was absurd. I tried to be patient, to talk through it, but our arguments kept spiraling into the same cycle. Whenever I tried to defend myself, telling her, "But I haven't done anything bad to you. The only thing I'm guilty of is loving you," she would go quiet, murmuring under her breath. But the next day, it would start all over again with a slightly different argument, as if she were testing new angles to break me down. Then, about 5 weeks ago, I got this sharp gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. One night, she came home late without telling me where she was, and I couldn't reach her. She was drunk, distant, and cold. The next day, when I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying I was being controlling and reading too much into things. But it kept happening. More late nights, more coldness. I knew I had to find out what was going on, so I tried to check her phone. She had deleted most of her messages, but I found a conversation with one of her new friends. They were discussing how she should approach me about an open relationship. The moment I read that, everything clicked. My gut had been right all along. She was cheating. I saw in the messages that she planned to bring it up on the second Monday of December, which was today. The kids were with their grandparents celebrating Christmas, and we were supposed to join them later. But now, I knew exactly what was coming, and I was ready. At breakfast, she brought it up like it was some casual thought that had just popped into her head. "What do you think about an open relationship?" she asked, stirring her coffee like she hadn't just shattered everything we had built. But I was prepared. I had been hearing such stories online, learning how these conversations go. I knew there was no saving this. My best option was to get out with some dignity and protect myself and the kids. I didn't yell. I didn't lose my temper. Instead, I went into full interrogation mode. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. "Who is he?" I asked. She blinked at me, pretending not to understand. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. "If you want to have this conversation with me, don't treat me like an idiot. At the very least, you can be honest. Because if you can't be honest, what's the point of this conversation?" She shifted in her seat. "What do you mean?" she repeated, her voice wavering. "If you lie to me now, we cannot have the discussion you want to have about our relationship. I can tell you're hiding something. It's obvious. So who is the guy?" "I am not," she started, but I cut her off. "Oh my God, it's more than one." She froze. "Don't," I said sharply. "Just don't lie. You have already destroyed my trust in you. I can see it all over your face. Either you're honest and we talk this through, or I file for divorce today. No arguments. No discussion. No nothing. Just divorce. Do you understand?" Her mouth opened and closed a few times. "But, say it." My voice was ice. "Do you understand? Do you understand that if you lie, I will divorce you? Say it. Do you understand that I already know a lot? I can read you like a book. If I catch you lying, we are over. Tell me you understand." She swallowed hard. "I understand." When she finally admitted to the 2 one-night stands, my stomach twisted into knots. I pressed for details, my voice eerily calm despite the rage boiling underneath. "Who were they?" I asked. She hesitated. "Are they married?" She swallowed hard, nodding. "Yes." "Do they have kids?" Another nod. I felt sick. She had destroyed not just our family, but theirs too. My mind raced through every interaction I'd had with her since she started this job. The late nights, the new attitude, the arguments out of nowhere. All of it made sense now. But then, she dropped another bombshell. "I'm planning to sleep with someone at work," she said, almost defiantly. "It's good for me." I stared at her, barely able to believe the words coming out of her mouth. "What the hell? You don't have any right to control me, Ethan," she snapped. "This is my life. My body. I have every right to pursue what makes me happy." I forced myself to stay calm. "Who is he?" "A colleague," she said with a shrug. "He and his wife are in an open relationship. Like I want us to be." I clenched my fists. "His name. His wife's name." She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was being unreasonable, then gave me their names. As if that made it better. as if her planning to have an affair with someone who had permission somehow excused what she had already done. Then, as if I hadn't already heard enough, she smirked. I was thinking of setting you up with some of my friends. One of them is really keen on you. I actually laughed at that. A bitter, humorless laugh. I knew exactly which friend she meant, and I wouldn't touch her with a barge pole. I'm not interested, I said flatly. She shrugged again, like it didn't matter. Like none of this mattered. That was it. I had to know the full extent of her betrayal. Give me your phone, I said. To my surprise, she handed it over and showed me the pattern to unlock it. Maybe she thought she had covered her tracks. Maybe she thought I wouldn't find anything. As soon as she went to the bathroom, I locked myself in my office and ran a recovery software to retrieve deleted messages, scouring through months of conversations. What I found broke me. The sheer volume of evidence, texts, photos, secret rendezvous, was overwhelming. This wasn't just a mistake. This was premeditated. While the program worked, I installed a spyware app on her phone from an online service. I needed to know what she would do next. When I finally stepped out of the office, she was banging on the door, her voice shrill with anger. What the hell are you doing, Ethan? I didn't answer. I handed her phone back and looked her dead in the eye. Leave. What? No. We need to talk about this. I didn't respond. I simply started packing her things, methodically, while she followed me, yelling. You're acting controlling. She screamed. You're holding me back, just like men have always held women back. I ignored her. You never really loved me, she accused. If you did, you'd support me. I have every right to do this. You should just accept it. Still, I didn't respond. I just kept packing. By the time I was done packing her bags, she was out of steam. She stood there, breathing hard, waiting for me to argue. When she finally shut her mouth, I spoke. My name is not Will Smith, so pick up your goddamn stuff and get the hell out of here. Finally, she huffed and grabbed her things. She had nowhere else to go but her parents' house. As she walked down the stairs, I spoke one last time. You're single now. You can do whatever you want. Be the town bicycle for all I care. I'm not controlling you anymore. My lawyer will be in touch. She turned, her mouth opening to respond. Slam. I shut the door and locked it. Later that night, I watched as she talked with her friends. They were cheering her on, telling her how strong she was, how she was standing up for herself, how she deserved better than me. But then, the conversation took a darker turn. One of them laughed and said, if he fights you on this, just accuse him of abuse. Courts always take the woman's side. Another one chimed in, explaining how she had destroyed her ex-husband by doing exactly that, fabricating an abuse claim and taking everything from him. My blood ran cold. I immediately ordered security cameras and started documenting everything. I knew now that I had to protect myself. Then, I saw her message her affair partner, setting up a hotel meetup. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I went online and found his wife. It didn't take long. I sent her a message. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your husband is cheating. With my wife. They're meeting at this hotel tonight. I thought you should know. She read it almost instantly. There was a long pause before she replied. Thank you. Then she hung up. Hours later, a video arrived in my inbox. The affair partner's wife had gone to the hotel and confronted them. I watched as she stormed into the room. You a-hole. You do this to me again? To the kids again? I told you we were over if you ever did this again. Then the camera panned, and I saw my wife, half-dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed. The next time I messaged her, it was short and simple. I saw the video. I never want you near me ever again. It feels like she sees our entire interaction as some kind of twisted competition, where in her mind, she's winning. She's completely delusional. I can't understand any of it. It's like she's disconnected from reality, as if she doesn't fully grasp that our marriage is over, that we are divorcing. I logged into her family's WhatsApp group and dropped the truth. I just want to let you all know that we are getting a divorce due to her infidelity. Thank you for making me feel welcome in this family, but I won't be part of it anymore. Then I shared the video and left the group. The messages and calls from her side started pouring in, but I haven't read them. I don't have the energy. Not for their excuses, not for their pity, and certainly not for whatever justification she might be trying to push through them. I called my parents and told them everything. My father didn't mince words. He messaged her directly, telling her she wouldn't be welcome for Christmas. And now, here I am at my parents' house, sitting in the same room I grew up in, trying to piece my life back together. My boss has been understanding. He's giving me time off until mid-January to sort things out. It's a relief, but it doesn't stop the pain. I've been keeping an eye on her conversations with her new friends, and it's clear she still hasn't processed what she's done. She doesn't seem to realize that she's lost everything. Her marriage, her family, even the respect of the people who once cared about her. And those so-called friends and her affair partner? They don't give a damn about her. She's just another passing thrill, another drama to entertain them. The messages from her haven't stopped. She's sent so many, but I've only responded twice. The first time, I told her, "It doesn't matter what you say. I don't know who you are. You are not my wife. My wife would never destroy my heart and soul while smiling. We will get a divorce. I don't care what you say or what you want. You have no influence or right to demand anything from me ever again. We are over." She kept pushing, kept trying to twist things in her favor, kept insisting on her rights while completely ignoring what she had done. So I sent one final message. "You are not my wife. I don't know you. My wife would never condemn our children to the pain and suffering of growing up in a broken home. You, whoever you are, seem proud of what you've done. My wife was loving, caring, considerate. My best friend. You are a self-obsessed, self-absorbed abomination." The messages stopped after that. Maybe, finally, something got through to her. Or maybe she just moved on to the next distraction. Either way, I don't care. This is the worst Christmas of my life. The kids asked me when their mother was coming, and before I could stop myself, I blurted it out. Mommy doesn't want to be a family anymore. She wants to be with other men. We're getting divorced. Their faces crumpled, their little hearts breaking in front of me. I should have waited until after Christmas. I should have gotten them straight into counseling before telling them anything. But I couldn't lie. Not when they were looking at me with those innocent, hopeful eyes. Thankfully, my mom and dad are here. They hold them close, shower them with love and reassurance. I will get back on my feet. For them. But I will never go back to her. I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror if I did. The level of disrespect and callousness in her behavior is unforgivable. I spoke with a lawyer that a friend recommended, and he confirmed that since the phone and subscription are under my name, I have every legal right to monitor it. It's not illegal. I own the equipment, and she's just using it. That was a small relief in all of this. I became obsessed with my wife's chats, reading and rereading every painful, insane thing she said to her friends. I thought I had seen the worst of it, but what finally broke me was when she described, in brutal terms, how our marriage and our children were a burden. She blamed us for holding her back from becoming a successful woman, from living her full potential. She said I was an oppressive piece of shit who had kept her from a good life, a life of success, casual sex, and freedom. I read those words over and over again, trying to make sense of them. And then it hit me. She never actually explained how we were burdens. No examples. No reasoning. Just broad, sweeping statements, as if she expected everyone to just agree that having a husband and children ruined her life. It's absolute bullshit. I never stopped her from doing anything. I paid for almost everything. Her part-time job barely covered her personal expenses, let alone anything for the family. I supported her hobbies, her dreams, her aspirations, even when she dropped out of class after class, wasting money and time on things she never followed through on. I made sure she felt loved, appreciated. I romanced her, took her out, showed her she mattered. If this is oppression, then I'd love to see what support looks like in her world. I must have passed out at some point because when I woke up, my three best friends, Mike, Bob, and Frank, were in the kitchen with my dad, making dinner. Mike was the first to speak. "Jesus, man, you look like shit." I let out a weak laugh. "I feel worse." My dad placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, son." I broke down. Again. And for the next few days, I was completely out of it. Mike, being ex-military, took charge. He lost his left arm below the elbow in service, and we were all there for him during his recovery. His wife had left him not long after his injury. Fortunately, they didn't have kids. He's doing well now, though. He adopted 2 kids and has a great girlfriend. Mike set up a Zoom call with the counselor who helped him after his amputation, and that conversation, it changed everything. The counselor explained how most amputees suffer from phantom pain in a limb that's no longer there. And he told me that what I was experiencing was the same thing. A huge part of my identity, being a husband, being a family man, was gone. It had been ripped from me. And now I was feeling the phantom pain of something that wasn't there anymore. "You have to accept that part of you is dead," he said. "And you'll keep feeling the pain until you start building something new." It was painful to hear, but it made sense. For the first time since this all started, I felt like I understood what was happening to me. And since then, I've been steadily improving. Bob, who's an executive in some high-level security company, handled the legal side. He's always been a bit of an enigma. I have no idea what he actually does, but he's very well off. He called some big-time law firm that his company keeps on retainer, and by Sunday morning, I was sitting across from a lawyer I could never afford in my wildest dreams. I stared at Bob. "How the hell did you manage this?" He shrugged. "I just made a call." "Bob, I can't." He cut me off. "Don't worry about it. I owe you. Remember middle school? You took a beating for me more times than I can count. This is me paying you back." Frank, who's a teacher and a father of 7, Stepped in to make sure my kids were okay. My kids love him and his family. He's been a rock, making sure they're cared for while I get my head together. Then came yesterday. A brutal day. It started with an STD screening first thing in the morning. And because life just loves to kick me when I'm down. Guess what? My wife gave me chlamydia. When the nurse told me, I don't even know what I felt. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even shock. It was pure rage. That was it. That was the final straw. No more wallowing. No more self-pity. No more tears. Gloves off. Full custody. I will give her nothing if I can get away with it. The lawyer tracked down the ex-husband of my wife's feminist friend, the one who had bragged about how she destroyed him in the divorce. It was shockingly easy through court records. We talked over WhatsApp, and the things he told me, they made me sick. She took everything, he said. She ruined my reputation, got full custody, and made sure I barely saw my kids. I was homeless for a while. I still don't know how I survived it. Hearing his story made me realize what I was up against. And now, I'm ready for war. I know I'm at a disadvantage. I accept that. As a man in the court system, the odds are stacked against me. I made sure to gather as much evidence as possible. My lawyer suggested a preemptive strike, filing a restraining order based on my wife's aggressive and openly anti-male statements, especially for the sake of our son. I told my lawyer to proceed. She expected my wife to be served today. Later, I had a Zoom call with my soon-to-be ex. Keep in mind, she hadn't reached out to me at all since she showed up at the house to argue with my dad. No calls. No texts. No attempts to see the kids. Nothing. It was clear she didn't actually care about any of us. When the call started, I was caught off guard. She was all done up, hairstyled, full makeup, and an outfit that made sure her cleavage was on full display. It was the most effort she had put into her appearance in years. At first, I thought maybe she was trying to manipulate me into second-guessing everything. But no, the second she opened her mouth, I realized what was really going on. She was trying to bait me into an argument. I kept my cool, just like my lawyer advised. I was recording everything, and even told her so at the start of the call. Apparently, courts look favorably on attempts to resolve things amicably before filing for a contested divorce, so I needed to try. She didn't even pretend to engage in that conversation. Instead, she started out with something completely insane. You know, she mused, tilting her head as if this was some casual chat over coffee. Different men form different races, have different size tools. She smiled, eyes glinting. I'm really looking forward to do some personal research on that. I blinked. I'm not interested in your hobbies, I said flatly. I'm here to discuss our divorce. That pissed her off. She wanted me to yell, to react, to get emotional. Instead, I stayed calm. As the conversation went on, she grew more aggressive, hurling insults, rolling her eyes, muttering under her breath. At one point, she muted herself and walked off camera, but I could still see her reflection in the mirror. She was talking to someone, probably her friends, getting advice on what to say next. She came back and launched into another tirade about how I was just another man and how she deserved better. I let her talk. When we reached a dead end, because, of course, she wasn't willing to cooperate, I leaned back in my chair. Fine, I said. Contested divorce it is. Then I added, by the way, you gave me chlamydia. And unlike you, I haven't been sleeping with anyone else. So you'd better get yourself to a clinic. She frowned, eyes narrowing. You're lying. I stared at her, unblinking. Am I? She didn't say anything. I ended the call and sent the recording straight to my lawyer. She was shocked at what she saw, especially the part where my wife openly trashed men for no reason. The good news? Since I owned the phone and the subscription, all the chat logs were legally usable in court. I didn't even need to keep monitoring them. I already had enough. Let them talk. Let them scheme. It didn't matter anymore. I had officially stopped caring. The lawyer was confident we'd win unless there was something I hadn't told her. So now here we are. It still hurts, but like Mike said, it's phantom pain. The limb is gone. I'm just feeling the echoes. No more self-pity. No more second-guessing. No prisoners. I will protect myself. I will protect my kids. They will have therapy if they need it, for as long as they need it. As for my wife, soon, she'll just be a distant memory. But I can't pretend this doesn't hurt. People keep telling me I'm strong, that I'm winning somehow, that I'm coming out on top. But this isn't a victory. There are no winners here. I wish this had never happened. I wish my family was still intact. I wanted a long, comfortable life with my wife as we watched our kids grow up, start their own lives. Instead, the train has gone off the rails, and the whole thing is burning in a ditch. I don't know what's wrong with her. She won't see a doctor. She won't admit she needs help. She acts like I'm the unreasonable one for not just going along with whatever she wants. And worst of all, she still hasn't even talked to the kids since the day this all came crashing down. I'm divorcing her because I have to. I'm separating our lives because she's given me no choice. And I know there's no going back now. I can never trust her again. I still don't know if my wife is completely oblivious or if she just doesn't care that I can monitor her communications. Either way, she remains convinced that I will never leave her and that my reaction to her behavior is completely unjustified. She continues to talk badly about me, our marriage, and even our children to her friends. My lawyer managed to win a temporary restraining order against her, but at the hearing yesterday morning, since there were no new direct threats, it wasn't extended. That was disappointing, but it doesn't change my course of action. My lawyer suggested we use the fact that she knowingly infected me as leverage to push for an uncontested divorce. I hate that this has to be such a strategic game, but I don't have a choice. I wish we could separate in a reasonable, civil process. She seems determined to make this as painful and adversarial as possible. If this goes to court, I'll probably have to pay her a lump sum for the equity in our house, but at least I won't be liable for alimony. Since she has shown zero interest in the kids, I'm optimistic about getting full custody. Still, my lawyer thinks it's worth trying for an amicable resolution before we go to court. I agreed, and we set up a meeting with my soon-to-be ex-wife and her representative for this week. The meeting with my wife happened yesterday afternoon. She showed up 30 minutes late, as expected. She didn't bring a lawyer. Instead, she showed up with one of her new so-called friends, some loud, trashy woman who seemed determined to cause trouble. The moment they walked in, they started talking trash, making snide remarks, and openly mocking me. My lawyer had given me strict instructions on how to handle this, so I sat there and kept my mouth shut. If they directly addressed me, I responded neutrally or even positively when possible. If my lawyer placed both hands flat on the table, that was my signal to say nothing at all. The insults kept coming. They laughed at their own jokes, clearly trying to rile me up, but I didn't take the bait. My wife still believes this is all some elaborate bluff, that there's no way I can actually divorce her. In her mind, only she can end this marriage, and only when she decides it's convenient for her. If she does divorce me, she assumes she will walk away with everything. I sat there thinking, what the hell is even happening? It was like watching two mean-spirited teenagers gossiping in the cafeteria. They finally ran out of steam, and my lawyer seized the opportunity to move forward. She laid out our proposed settlement for an amicable divorce. I want to be generous to ensure a quick, peaceful resolution, my lawyer explained, sliding the document across the table. Ethan is willing to pay a lump sum of $60,000 for the equity in the house, investments, and my wife didn't even let her finish the sentence. Her eyes widened, and she grinned like she'd just won the lottery. Her friend nudged her, both of them looking thrilled. Where do I sign? My wife asked, grabbing a pen. My lawyer hesitated. Don't you want to go over the rest of the agreement first? No, she said, barely containing her excitement. I'll sign right now. Yesterday was the hearing, and I'm basically divorced. It'll take 4 to 6 months for everything to be official. My lawyer, my incredible, no-nonsense lawyer, managed to get me a hearing just 12 days after we submitted the paperwork. No doubt she called in some favors for that one. I'll always be grateful to her. But from the weekend up until today, things have been insane. Friday morning, I woke up to loud banging on my front door. When I opened it, a whole group of police officers stood there with a search warrant. My first thought was the kids. I immediately asked if I could bring them outside while they searched the house. Thankfully, they agreed. As I stood outside, watching them go through everything, I tried to make sense of it all. I was shaking, barely processing the words on the copy of the warrant they handed me. My lawyer was on the phone within minutes, but the warrant was valid. There was nothing she could do in the moment. While the cops were inside, tearing my house apart, I stood there in a daze, running through everything in my head. What the hell could they be looking for? Then my lawyer's voice cut through my thoughts. Ethan, listen to me. Stay calm. Don't say anything except what's absolutely necessary. Do you understand? I swallowed hard, nodding even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, this could be about your wife, she continued. Just let them do their job, and we'll deal with it afterward. I clenched my jaw, watching as one of the officers dumped the contents of a drawer onto the floor. They're trashing my house. I know. I'm sorry, but don't worry about that right now. Just focus on staying calm. She was right. Losing my temper wouldn't help anything. I had no idea at the time, but while I was standing there, trying to make sense of the chaos, my ex and her 3 lovely harpy friends had been arrested. Turns out, they got high and drunk, stole my car, and crashed it into someone's house at high speed. They were all arrested. Every single one of them had drugs on them, or in their system. The one in the passenger seat was in critical condition. The others were banged up pretty badly too. And Claudia, the leader of the harpy pack, the same woman who bragged about screwing over and lying about her ex-husband in court, the same ex-husband, Henry, who has become one of my closest friends. Yeah, she was in the car too. I exhaled sharply, gripping my phone tightly as my lawyer kept talking, but I wasn't even hearing her anymore. My head was spinning. The cops didn't find anything in the search. I gave my statement to the police, making it clear that my ex-wife doesn't live here anymore. She's been staying with her parents, and I had no idea what she was up to. No, I didn't give Claudia permission to drive my car. No, I had no idea what they were doing. I answered everything as calmly as I could, but inside, I was completely unraveling. When I finally stepped back inside my house, I just broke down. It was trashed, completely and utterly destroyed. The cops had left nothing untouched, and with everything else piling up, it was the last straw. I felt like I had nothing left to give. The only thing I could think to do was call my dad. As soon as he heard my voice, he knew. "Come home," he said, no hesitation. "Bring the kids. Your mother will take care of you." So I did. My dad picked us up, and the moment I stepped into my parents' house, I felt like I could breathe again. My mom had a plate of food ready before I could even sit down, and as I slumped onto the back porch, I let the weight of it all hit me. I ate in silence, feeling completely sorry for myself while my mom sat beside me. What I didn't know was that while I was falling apart, my dad was making phone calls. By the time I finally pulled myself together, 26 friends and family members were at my house, scrubbing every single inch of it clean. They washed walls and ceilings, fixed loose door handles, put away clothes, cleaned furniture. When I walked back in the next day, it looked better than it ever had before. I stood there, completely stunned. I don't know what to say, I admitted, voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to say anything, son," my dad said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You've been through hell. Let us help." I had no idea how I could ever repay them. Meanwhile, the fallout from Claudia's crash kept getting worse. The police found more drugs at her house, piles of them. Her boyfriend was nowhere to be found, and the worst part? There was no babysitter. Her kids had been left alone. CPS took them immediately. Henry, who had spent the last 5 years fighting just to see his kids, was able to show the judge the chat logs, the abandonment, the drugs, everything. He was granted emergency custody on Saturday, and honestly, I don't think I've ever seen someone so relieved. "They're safe now," Henry told me, his voice shaking with emotion. "That's all that matters. He still has to go through the courts to make it permanent, but the odds are on his side. Claudia's case is bad, worse than anyone thought. If her friend in critical condition doesn't make it, she's looking at serious time. Either way, she's going to prison." Bob, being the absolute legend that he is, set Henry up in a rental apartment through a friend. And that made me realize something. I know practically nothing about Bob's personal or professional life. I intend to fix that. Anyway, I'm getting off track again. Claudia was the one behind the wheel when she drove off the road and into that house. Between the drugs, the alcohol, and the crash, the police had enough to issue search warrants for everyone's homes. Since my ex-wife was still technically registered as living at my house, they searched mine too. That was when I decided, I'm selling the house and moving away as soon as possible. I can't stay here. Not with the possibility that something like this could happen again. Then Sunday came, and my phone rang. It was my ex's parents. Their house had been searched, too. They told me they had visited their daughter in jail on Saturday, and after that, they didn't trust a single word she said anymore. They wanted to talk, so they came over. I sat across from them, waiting as her father ran a hand down his face and sighed. "We had no idea," he admitted. "She told us she was staying with you, that you two were trying to work things out." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah? She told me you knew everything and didn't care." They looked devastated. They had believed her when she said the cheating was just a one-time, drunken mistake. They had no idea she had been out partying, sleeping around, doing drugs. Hell, they didn't even know the half of it. Then Monday rolled around, and my ex-wife called me from jail. She wanted me to post her bail, 15 grand. Her parents had already told her no, so I was apparently her last option. "Are you serious? You actually think I'd bail you out after everything?" She sniffled. "Please, Ethan. I need help." I almost laughed. Now she needed help? After talking to my lawyer, we drafted an agreement. If I paid her bail, it would be subtracted from the settlement money until she showed up in court and the bail was released. Her mother would act as the custodial of the remaining amount. I wasn't about to let my ex use this as an excuse to avoid the hearing, and my lawyer agreed. In the end, my ex didn't have a choice. She signed. She was released Monday afternoon, but it didn't take long for her to screw up again. Her parents had set conditions for her to stay with them. No drugs, commit to rehab, an open phone policy, drop the bad influences, but she refused. By Tuesday, she was gone, off to stay with some of her new friends. She didn't even bother showing up for the custody hearing. When I stood before the judge, my lawyer laid everything out, her drug use, her disappearance, the crash, CPS taking Claudia's kids, her missing court. It was a done deal. The hearing lasted all of 30 minutes. I won full custody. The settlement followed the agreement we had signed. It'll take 4 to 6 months for the paperwork to be finalized, but in reality, it's over. There's nothing she can do to stop it now. A week later, I got a call from the hospital. My ex was there, badly beaten. Since I was still listed as her emergency contact and she was still on my health insurance, they had to inform me. There had been an altercation, and she had lost some teeth, suffered a broken jaw, and needed to stay for observation for a few days. I immediately called her parents and brought them with me. When we arrived, we learned that some of her so-called friends had attacked her. Apparently, word had spread that Henry had chat logs of Claudia bragging about what she had done to him, and for some reason, they assumed my ex had been the one to leak them. As a result, they had beaten her and thrown her out. I couldn't believe it. Even after everything, she still didn't understand that I had access to monitor her phone. She had no idea how much I actually knew. And I wasn't about to tell her. I planned to keep things exactly as they were until the divorce papers were finalized. Until I could hold them in my hands, I wouldn't let myself believe it was real. When I saw her lying there, bruised and swollen, something in me wavered. For a brief moment, I wanted to laugh and mock her. But that instinct died as soon as she opened her mouth. "Can I move back home?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the injuries. I stared at her, almost laughing at the absurdity of the request. "No way in hell," I said firmly. Her mother, standing beside me, didn't even flinch. "We're not giving you a single penny unless you get clean and stay clean for at least a year," she told her daughter. "And even then, you have to follow our rules. No drugs. No bad influences. Full transparency." My ex barely reacted. She just sat there, looking irritated more than anything. "I'm sorry I ruined everything," she muttered, but she wouldn't even look at me. I sighed, shaking my head. "I don't think you mean that." She didn't argue. She just stared off at the hospital wall, uninterested, detached. She didn't ask about the hearing. She didn't ask about the condition of her critically injured friend. She didn't even ask about the kids. She just sat there, lost in her own world. It hurt. It really did. I wanted to scream at her, to make her understand what she had done, to me, to our family, to herself. But I knew it wouldn't matter. This was who she had become. I left the hospital without another word. From this point on, I was going completely no contact. I couldn't do this anymore. I had to protect my kids. The next few days were a blur. Everyone kept congratulating me, treating me like I had won some major victory. Then, another call came. This time, it was from the nurse taking care of one of my ex's friends, the one who had been in critical condition. She had woken up. I don't know what made me do it, but I asked if I could talk to her. Maybe I was looking for closure. Maybe I just wanted to understand how everything had gone so wrong. She agreed. When I walked into the hospital room, the first thing she said was, "Hey, you want a BJ for $20? I swallowed back the disgust and shook my head. "No," I said, "but I'll give you 50 if you tell me the truth about what's been happening." She stared at me for a moment before shrugging. "Sure, why not?" And then she told me everything. Claudia was the ringleader. She had dragged my wife into their group despite the objections of the others. At first, it was just partying, but soon, the drugs came. Then, the addiction. Then, the selling of their bodies to pay for more. My wife had started with the same feminist nonsense they all used to justify their actions. My body, my choice. But in the end, it was just a cover for their self-destruction. She got hooked fast, the woman told me bluntly. And once she was hooked, she started doing what we all do. Sex for money. Money for drugs. I felt like I was going to be sick. "She wanted the money from you, you know," she added. She didn't care about anything else. I clenched my jaw. It wasn't anything I hadn't already suspected, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. I asked about the men who had beaten my ex, and she told me everything she knew. They weren't just random drug users. They were dangerous. And now I had to wonder if they would come for me or the kids next. Meanwhile, Claudia was facing a long list of charges: death threats, resisting arrest, drug possession, prostitution, trafficking, child abuse, DUI, property damage, auto theft. She had been denied bail as a flight risk. She wasn't going anywhere. Then, the nurse told me something else, something I had feared might happen. My ex had tried to take her own life. I had talked to her father about it beforehand, suspecting she might do something drastic now that her world was falling apart. We had agreed to keep a close watch on her. Luckily, she still didn't know that I had live information from her mobile. While we were at the cabin on Saturday, I got a message from her. It read like a suicide note. She confessed everything: her addiction, the prostitution, how she had let everybody down. She wrote that she was going to do the only thing she could do. My heart started pounding as I read it. I immediately called her dad. "I got a message from her," I said, my voice shaking. "It sounds bad. Like she's about to do something." His voice was tense. "Where is she?" I checked my phone. Because I still had access to her location, I could see where she was. She's in a park. I think she's just sitting there. I'm on my way. Minutes felt like hours. I kept staring at my phone, willing the dot that marked her location to stay still. I knew I couldn't do anything from where I was, but my mind kept racing with worst-case scenarios. What if he got there too late? What if she was already gone? Then my phone rang. I found her, her dad said, breathless. She's unconscious, but she's alive. She's hypothermic. I'm calling an ambulance. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She was rushed to the hospital and stabilized, but the doctors said she was lucky. If her father had gotten there just a little later, she might not have made it. They pumped her stomach, got her warmed up, and put her on methadone for now. The doctors said she had a long road ahead, but at least she had a chance. Her father successfully filed to become her appointed guardian, meaning she no longer had the right to refuse treatment. He had her forcibly committed to a rehab center, where she would go through a sedated detox. I didn't know when exactly, but it would probably happen sometime this week. The way the courts worked, her father was granted guardianship not because she had tried to take her own life, but because she had abandoned her children. Apparently, the law sees abandoning your kids as proof that you're not thinking rationally, but trying to end things? That they just let slide. It made no sense to me, but I was just relieved she was getting help. I hadn't canceled her health insurance yet, so she would get treatment covered. I told her father I would help with the finances as long as my ex didn't know it was coming from me. Meanwhile, I was still worried about the guys who had beaten her up. I kept looking over my shoulder, wondering if they'd come for me or the kids next. Henry was the one who had presented those chat logs in court, and they thought my ex had given them to him. They might still want revenge. I decided to talk to Henry about it. He listened, nodding slowly. I'll handle it. I knew what that meant. Henry wasn't the kind of man to make empty promises. He was a mountain of muscle, a man who looked like he could rip the average guy in half without breaking a sweat. But for all his intimidating size, he was patient, kind. He'd rather solve problems with words than fists. But when he needed to be, he could be terrifying. He went straight to their apartment. Later, when he told me what had happened, I could picture it so clearly in my head. He walked in, grabbed both guys by the neck, and told them, in no uncertain terms, that Claudia had given him the chat logs. And since you hurt someone I know, he said, you have two choices. You go with me to the police right now and confess everything, or we settle this right here. He let that hang in the air for a moment before adding, and if we do it here, I promise you, there will be pain. A lot of pain. I imagine he smiled at them when he said that. He told me they practically tripped over themselves getting to the police station. I wasn't worried about them anymore. With that taken care of, I focused on moving. Bob helped me find a new apartment, and soon, the kids and I would have a fresh start. But I was exhausted. This whole thing weighed on my soul, and no matter how much I tried to push forward, I felt crushed under the weight of it. The only thing keeping me going was my kids. I had to stay strong for them. Strangely, when they found out their mother was an addict, it actually helped them understand. It was easier for them to hear that she was sick and needed help rather than think she had just abandoned them for no reason. I told them she still loved them, even if she wasn't here right now. Henry came over that night with his kids. We were going to watch Madagascar 3. I was trying to make good memories, as many as possible. Henry was doing the same. The kids were laughing again. They were playing, acting like kids should. I watched them, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. And then, days later, I got the call late at night. I had been sitting on the couch, half watching some cartoon with the kids, my mind elsewhere, when my phone rang. I knew, even before I answered, that it wasn't good news. It was her father. His voice was strained, like he was holding back tears. She's gone, Ethan. I felt the air leave my lungs. What? She overdosed. In rehab. His voice broke on the last word. For a few seconds, I couldn't say anything. My brain refused to process it. She was supposed to be safe there. She was supposed to get better. How? I finally managed to ask. She had a visitor today. Some friend of hers. I don't know the name, but the police do. She gave her something. He let out a shaky breath. She was found unresponsive a few hours later. They couldn't save her. I closed my eyes. Jesus Christ. The friend's been arrested, he continued. They're looking into how the drugs got in, whether anyone at the facility helped. It doesn't matter now, though. She's gone. I sat there in silence, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I should have been furious. I should have been screaming, punching walls, demanding justice. But all I felt was empty. I heard him sniff on the other end. I failed her. No, I said automatically, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. We should have done more, he whispered. I didn't have an answer for that. The funeral was a mess. Her parents were inconsolable. Her mother kept saying over and over, she was supposed to get better. She was supposed to come back. Her father stood stiffly by the casket, jaw clenched, tears in his eyes. He had fought so hard for her, dragged her to rehab, forced her into treatment, and now there was nothing left to fight for. The kids didn't go. I didn't see the point in making them watch their mother be lowered into the ground. I told them the truth, that their mom had been really sick and that sometimes, no matter how much help someone gets, they don't make it. Lila cried. Derek just nodded and asked if we could go play video games. I think that was his way of dealing with it. Days passed. The world kept turning, even though it felt like it shouldn't. People called, sent messages, offered their condolences. Henry came over with his kids, sat with me while I processed everything. You did everything you could, he said one night after the kids had gone to bed. I stared at my drink. Did I? Henry didn't answer right away. He just watched me. You were a good husband, a good father, but you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I sighed. I still loved her, you know. I know. But love hadn't been enough. She was gone. My in-laws were shattered. The kids were adjusting in their own ways, and I was just here. Life didn't pause. It didn't give you time to catch your breath. It just kept going, whether you were ready or not. And so life goes on. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.